All right, today we're unpacking a book that did way more than just hit the bestseller lists. We're talking about Javier Zamora's memoir, Solito. It's a story that starts with one little boy's incredible journey and ends with a fight that pretty much challenged the entire definition of American literature. So let's get into it. This quote from the author himself, it really cuts right to the heart of what makes this book so powerful. He's making a plea to all of us to move past the headlines, the statistics, the political noise, and to actually focus on the human lives at the center of it all. I mean, let's be honest, immigration has become this huge political football, right? It's just endless talking points and cable news arguments. But what Zamora does with Solito is completely different. As critics everywhere have pointed out, he just cuts through all that noise by telling one unforgettable, deeply personal story. And just look at the book's cover, it perfectly captures this whole idea. You see the silhouette of a little boy, but if you look closer, it's not just an outline. It's actually filled with the landscape he traveled through, the mountains, the desert. It's this beautiful, powerful metaphor, right? The journey literally becomes a part of who you are. So, okay, let's zoom in on that journey. At the absolute heart of this memoir is Javier Zamora himself. But as a young boy, who went by the nickname Chapito, he's about to leave everything he's ever known, to reunite with parents he can barely even remember, in La USA. And the title tells you so much right from the get-go. Solito. In Spanish, it means alone, but it's more than that. It's the diminutive form, so it's like little and alone. It implies a smallness, a deep vulnerability. And that one word, it just sets this gut-wrenching emotional tone for the whole book. And get this, he was only 9 years old. This is so key. This isn't some adult looking back and analyzing everything. The real power of this book, and reviewers say this over and over, is that it's told completely from a kid's point of view. You get the raw confusion, the pure fear, the actual experience, without any filter. Now, what was supposed to be a 2-week trip completely spiraled into a 9-week nightmare. This timeline just shows you the insane scope of it all. He leaves El Salvador, goes all the way through Guatemala and Mexico, fails his first border crossing attempt, and then finally makes it across in June. Just try to imagine being 9 years old, facing that level of uncertainty for 9 straight weeks. And those 9 weeks were filled with things no child should ever have to face. We're talking about being held at gunpoint by corrupt cops, battling brutal weather from the ocean to the desert, being called awful, hateful names. He was even caught by Border Patrol and locked up. It's a really stark look at what people mean when they talk about the true horrors of migration. But here's the thing. In the middle of all of that terror, something pretty remarkable starts to happen. The story begins to shift from just being about survival to being about deep, profound human connection. This quote from Book Reporter just nails it. It's a perfect summary of the book's soul. It's not just about all the dangers he faced, but about the incredible bonds that were forged in the fire of that journey. A group of 6 total strangers, they all banded together just to survive. And in doing so, they became the family he found on the road. There was Patricia and her daughter Carla, and these 2 guys, Chino and Marcelo, who became so fiercely protective of little Javiercito. He calls them his little fake family, but you know what? That bond was about as real as it gets. Okay, so let's zoom back out. A book this raw, this powerful, it was always going to make an impact. But Solito became something else entirely. It was a true cultural phenomenon that just resonated with everyone, critics and readers alike. I mean, when you have a literary icon like Sandra Cisneros saying this right on the cover of the book, that sends a message. It told the world this wasn't just another memoir. This was an absolutely essential piece of literature. And the praise from critics was just overwhelming. I mean, it was basically universal. The New York Times called it an important, beautiful work. NPR said it was required reading. The San Francisco Chronicle called it the beating heart at the very center of all the noise. The consensus was loud and clear. This book was a really big deal. Of course, no book gets a 100% perfect score. While the praise was just massive, a few reviewers pointed out the frequent use of untranslated Spanish, or wondered how he could remember dialogue so clearly from when he was 9. But for most, that use of Spanish was actually a huge plus. It was seen as a key part of the book's authenticity, a way to pull you even deeper into his world. Now, this whole story doesn't just end when the book gets published. This is where a personal journey completely transforms into a public fight. A fight to change the actual rules of the American literary establishment. So, you've got Solito, it's a critical darling, it's a New York Times bestseller,
You'd think it would be a shoo-in for all the major literary awards, right?
Well, here's the real twist. Why was this celebrated, vital American story completely ineligible for one of the highest honors in literature, the Pulitzer Prize? And the answer is just, well, it's kind of shocking in its simplicity. Because the author, Javier Zamora, was not a U.S. citizen. Think about that. He lived in the U.S. since he was 9 and wrote this quintessentially American story. But that one rule just shut him out completely. But Zamora fought back. The whole thing started with the incredible irony of being asked to judge a prize he wasn't even allowed to win. That led him to publish this fiery op-ed in the LA Times, and it just sparked a movement. Soon other major authors were joining his cause, and together, they actually won. The Pulitzer Board changed its decades-old rule. It was a monumental victory that opened the door for so many other writers. And Zamora framed his fight so perfectly. He basically said, it's our duty now to imagine the actual future because they couldn't even imagine our presence. He was making this bigger point that clinging to these old, outdated rules just robs all of us of brilliant art and new perspectives. It's a powerful call to imagine a much more inclusive future. So at the end of the day, Javier Zamora's story, both the one in the book and his fight outside of it, really forces us to ask a big question. What other voices are we missing out on? What other masterpieces are we ignoring when we decide to draw lines based on a passport instead of on talent? It makes you wonder, who else is out there just waiting to be heard?